the Catholic world. And it comes from a man who has never been afraid to speak uncomfortable truths, Archbishop Carlo Maria Viganò. His words are not light, not passing comments to be ignored, but a declaration that cuts to the very heart of the Church and its future. It is a message that does not allow indifference. Once you hear it, you cannot go back to the way you thought before. It leaves a mark, because it points to something deeper than passing scandals or daily controversies. It points to a crisis in the very foundations of the papacy, and therefore in the very life of the Church itself. The Archbishop speaks of a destructive plan, a plan that has not suddenly appeared, but one that has been slowly unfolding for decades, hidden beneath the surface, disguised by gestures of authority and appearances of continuity. His statement is difficult to refute because it does not rely on emotions or rumors, but on facts, history, and a clear reading of what has happened before our eyes. His words reopen questions that many thought were closed or preferred to bury under silence. Questions that touch the resignation of Benedict XVI, the rise of his successor, and the changes that followed the Second Vatican Council. More than 10 years have passed since Benedict XVI renounced the papacy. Many assumed that with his departure and the arrival of a new pontiff, the questions would slowly fade into history. Yet they have not faded. Instead, they continue to echo, casting a long shadow over the Church. The figure of Benedict XVI as Pope Emeritus, the hidden letters that only came to light after his death, the uneasy feeling that something was not fully explained. All these elements continue to trouble the hearts of many faithful. The silence of mainstream media has been striking. In an age when every minor controversy is amplified to global proportions, the great questions about Benedict's resignation and the validity of that act have been left untouched by most major outlets, particularly in the English-speaking world. The topic has been avoided, almost as if there is a deliberate refusal to open the discussion. But in Italy, in the very heart of Catholic life, the silence has been broken. An Italian journalist, Marco Tossati, brought to light a declaration from Archbishop Vigano that reopens the debate with force. The trigger was a revelation by Monsignor Nicola Bucks, a theologian and close collaborator of the Roman Curia. He revealed that in 2014, Benedict XVI had exchanged letters with him about his resignation. These letters were kept hidden for 10 years and only revealed after Benedict's death. Why were they concealed for so long? Why not publish them while the Pope Emeritus was still alive and able to confirm or clarify their content? This delay raises disturbing questions. The secrecy itself seems suspicious, as if there was something too dangerous to let the world know while Benedict could still speak. It is here that Archbishop Vigano steps in. With a radical interpretation, he does not treat this as a minor academic debate. He sees it as part of a much greater crisis. He declares that the papacy itself has entered a period of decay, that Benedict's resignation was not a personal act of weakness, but a symptom of something larger and destructive, planned aimed at transforming the papacy into something it was never meant to be. At the center of this crisis lies the strange figure of the Pope Emeritus. For 2,000 years, such a role never existed. A pope either lived and governed until death, or he renounced his office completely, disappearing into history as a former pontiff. But Benedict's resignation created something new, a half-step, an invention without precedent in canon law. This figure has only created confusion among the faithful, giving rise to the dangerous idea that one could somehow retain the dignity of the papacy without exercising its power, or exercise power without holding the title. This division between the munus, the being pope, and the ministerium, the acting as pope, is what Vigano calls a heretical monster. It undermines the very existence of the papacy, reducing it to a human construct that can be manipulated and reshaped at will. For Archbishop Vigano, this division is not accidental. It is the fruit of a long process, a plan that has been unfolding since the Second Vatican Council. The resignation of Benedict XVI and the figure of the Pope Emeritus are not random mistakes. They are deliberate steps in a revolution that has been changing the papacy from a divinely instituted monarchy into a human institution subject to the pressures of the modern world. The Archbishop does not hesitate to speak plainly. He insists that the Church has chosen silence and collusion instead of confronting the truth. He points out that Benedict's resignation was not merely the decision of a tired man, overwhelmed by age and responsibilities. It was part of a wider design in which curial games, external pressures, and financial interests played their roles. And the result, in Vigano's view, is devastating. The chair of Peter was handed over to those who would demolish it from within. But Vigano goes further still. He rejects the idea that Benedict and Francis represent two opposing poles, one conservative and one progressive, one traditional and one modernist. Many faithful have been tempted to think this way, imagining Benedict as the guardian of tradition and Francis as the radical reformer. Vigano says this is an illusion. It is a stage play. The two figures, he argues, represent different phases of the same revolutionary process. They may look different, their styles may clash, but their actions converge toward the same goal, to redefine the papacy in a collegial, synodal, and ecumenical sense. In other words, to empty it of real authority and reduce it to a symbolic role. From this perspective, Benedict's resignation takes on a new meaning. It was not a retreat of a weary man, but part of a coherent plan. A plan that has been active since Vatican II, a plan that aims to desacralize the papacy, stripping it of its divine authority and turning it into a symbolic leadership role, first among equals, rather than the supreme office given by Christ himself. The roots of this plan, according to Vigano, lie in the Second Vatican Council itself. He does not mince words. He calls the council the beginning of a permanent revolution within the Church. From that moment, the Church began to change its very essence, adopting principles foreign to the Catholic faith. Concepts like collegiality, ecumenism, and synodality may sound attractive to modern ears, but Vigano insists they are drawn from democratic and secular ideologies, not from the divine constitution of the Church. By introducing these foreign principles, the Council set the Church on a path of continuous mutation, where every pope contributed to advancing the same process. This is why Vigano warns against making false distinctions between before and after, between one pope and another. He says there is one single process, moving step by step through thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. Just as in Hegelian dialectics, one pope may seem to go in one direction, the next in another, but together they serve the same revolution. Even Benedict XVI, often praised as a defender of tradition, is not spared in this analysis. Vigano argues that Benedict's attempts at compromise, such as the motu proprio summorum pontificum, were illusions. They gave the impression that the ancient liturgy and modern reforms could coexist peacefully, but in truth, the two visions are irreconcilable. By trying to reconcile them, Benedict only reinforced the revolutionary process. His resignation, therefore, was not a betrayal of his principles, but the logical outcome of his position within the same plan. The consequences, Vigano insists, are devastating. The papacy, once a monarchical institution instituted by Christ himself, has been reduced to a negotiable, adaptable office that changes with the times. It no longer stands as a rock against the world, but as a symbol shaped by the world. The resignation of Benedict and the figure of Pope Emeritus are part of this tragic reduction. For Vigano, the Church today faces nothing less than demolition from within. The enemy has not attacked from the outside, but has entered the very sanctuary, disguising revolution as renewal, compromise as dialogue, and surrender as progress. He warns that this is not the first time in history the Church has suffered such a passion. There have been other times when the faithful endured confusion, division, and betrayal. But in every case, the truth endured, and the faithful who stood firm were purified. The Archbishop ends with a call taken from the first letter of Peter: stand firm in your faith. He reminds us that history shows us the dangers of compromise. Every time the Church has tried to make peace with the spirit of the world, it has ended in slavery, not freedom. The only path forward is fidelity, clarity, and courage. This is not an easy message to hear. It forces us to look at uncomfortable truths. It forces us to reconsider what we thought we knew about Benedict, about Francis, about Vatican II, and about the direction of the Church. But perhaps that is exactly why it matters. The words of Archbishop Vigano are not meant to soothe. They are meant to awaken, and now the question falls to us: what will we do with this warning? Will we turn away, preferring the comfort of silence? Or will we face the reality that the Church is passing through a trial of historic proportions? Only one thing is certain: after hearing these words, nothing looks the same again.